The unveiling of the company of heaven. Every man and every woman is a star.
Welcome once more to the Free Radical Media Podcast. I am one of your co-hosts this evening, Eric Scott Picard, joined as ever by the intrepid Patrick Ryan.
What's up, everyone?
So we've got an interesting show for you tonight. It's a very serious topic that's really been making the rounds nationally now in the last few months. We're going to talk about an activist named John Lang, who died in Fresno, California. For those of you not familiar with the case, I'm sure a lot of you are, but for those of you not familiar, let me just give you a rundown on the series of events that led up to this man's passing. John Lang was an activist. In the months prior, he'd been working on local police issues in Fresno, California, allegations of police corruption, which we will talk about here shortly. On January 14th, he posted a Facebook status in which he predicted his own death. He alleged that there were people conspiring to kill him or to frame him. On the 15th of January, he contacted the local news, ABC 30, alleging the same issues. On the 16th of January this year, he posts some videos of suspicious vehicles outside of his residence. On the 17th, he wrote an open letter to the Department of Justice and the FBI about these issues. On the 20th of January, at 3 o'clock, around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, there was a disturbance at his home. His neighbors called saying that his house was on fire. There was a local fire department truck nearby who responded to the call. They found the residence in flames. They broke into the home and found John Lang, activist of Fresno, California, dead in his home, apparently with multiple stab wounds. At the time, they weren't sure if the stab wounds were the cause of death or smoke inhalation or the fire. Later, the death was ruled by Fresno County coroner a suicide. There's numerous other strange events surrounding the passing of John Lang. We've got two people who were acquainted with John Lang with us tonight, both of whom are journalists, and both of whom are in Fresno, California, and they join us tonight. First, we've got James Jobe, who describes himself as a free thinker and anti-establishmentarian, and is an activist and journalist with the Fifth Column News. He's also a member of the National Leadership Group at the Solutions Institute, solutions-institute.org. We are also joined by Brian Sumner. Brian Sumner writes for Copblock.org, who oftentimes do very great work. Brian is an activist, journalist, and photographer from the Fresno area who has taken special interest in the police state. He facilitates a watchdog group called the Fresno Liberty Movement, advocates filming the police and alternatives to state-controlled protection services. He also served in the U.S. Army with a tour in Iraq in 2010. Most recently, he participated in the Copblock Network's hashtag MacTour. You can find his information, the Fresno's People Media, and on copblock.org. Gentlemen, it's a pleasure for you to join us tonight.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us on.
And go ahead and introduce yourselves briefly so people can get a handle on your voices.
I'm Brian Sumner.
And I'm James Jobe.
All right, great. All right, so as I said during the introduction there, both of you were acquainted with John Lang, correct, in one form or another?
Yeah, so I myself had spoken with him via social media, mostly Facebook, on actually numerous occasions. On even on comment threads, which are are unfortunately no longer alive today, as his page has been taken down.
And I spoke with John primarily through a direct message on Facebook, and one day last year, I spent about 3 or 4 hours at his house, and he ran me through his entire story.
Yeah, I'd like you to tell me a little bit more about John's activism first. Let's let everybody get a handle on who this person was. What was he passionate about? What was he normally working on? And then what was he working on leading up to his death?
Okay, that's a fairly good question. And so suffice it to say, there's a lot of us here that have a network going on. Especially among activists, as people know, it's basically a tight knit group. It's a bird of a feather kind of flocks, right?
Sure.
So John was really active online in all of our groups, all of our. He was active with Copblock Fresno. He was active with Fresno People's Media. He was active with the Fifth Column. He was active with a bunch of different sites that all of us kind of help and maintain and have access to. And that's how we even got to know him, or even had any notion of contacting him to hear him out when he reached out.
The beginning of John's online presence was in 2009. He said he uncovered evidence that the police were driving through the parking lots of local businesses and running license plates, and then sending those people tickets for having expired licenses, or waiting around and arresting them if they had active warrants, and just driving through the parking lots, fishing for anything, not really having to actually go and do any work.
This is something that I've seen a lot about. Yeah.
And then to make it public, he started posting on message boards for the Fresno Bee, and unfortunately, those message boards aren't alive anymore, as most commenting now goes through Facebook or independent commenting sources.
Also, I'd like to iterate here too that he had tried to build sites on his own.
Mm-hmm.
He put money into the domain names and put all the time and effort into these sites wherein he posted all kinds of content that was basically all his. I don't even know if he had any outsourced material on it. It was one or three of them, a couple of them that I know about myself were sites that had the names of predominant people in the area. So Jody Murray is a news journalist.
No, Jody Murray was in charge of a lot of the online parts of the Fresno Bee.
Right. So the Jody Murray was part of the Fresno Bee network, and well known, and a predominant name in this area. He purchased the domain right for jodymurray.com.
And the reason this is kind of significant to the story is that John believed that Jody Murray had given his IP address, as well as a lot of other information and metadata to the Fresno police.
Okay.
And I'm as skeptical as everybody, and I believe that's a pretty far-fetched accusation to make for just an average tech editor or someone who handles just the day-to-day online basis of a website. Because I know I'm personally friends with a man named you probably may even know him, Brendan Parsons.
Okay, sure.
And he's been giving portions of his IP address out for years, hoping people will come and find him for his views on the military. Because he always people are always like, oh, I'll pull your IP address, and he's like, well, here's the last four digits of my IP address. Can you really do it? And it's just one of those things, It's like, to make that claim, I think, against the average tech editor or the average technical person, I don't think it substantiates itself.
So, but what you're saying though is that John Lang believed that this person was leaking this information.
Yes, and that's why he created the website in his name, which he posted his manifesto documenting harassment from 2009. Now, John said there was previous harassment pre-2009, but he didn't start documenting it until 2009.
Okay.
And I think that's
So
reasonable to assume. Like, people get bullied for a long time before they ever fight back.
Sure.
You might get harassed by the cops for a long time before you start noticing the dates that it happens.
But he was documenting like potential police harassment as far back as 2009 on his person.
Yes.
And
it wasn't just something that happened in the last 6 months, let's say.
What's up?
It wasn't something that just happened in the last 6 months, let's say. This was a pattern that he had recognized and was talking about for several years.
I don't know how persistent he was with it. I know he started in 2009, but I don't think it was like an everyday thing where every day he would I think he started in 2009 and then he fell off, maybe he got burned out, and then once things like Facebook and other social media tools came around where he was able to connect himself with other people who maybe held similar ideas or felt the same way as him, he could connect with them through social media.
Okay.
And then kind of tell them their story or spread, his agenda.
Sure. Okay. But did he mostly focus then on issues of police corruption?
Yes. Yeah, a lot of his activism and a lot of his outcries were regarding police overreach.
And I don't even know if I would call it activism or call John an activist as much as I just would somebody who pointed at things and then made loud noises about them.
Okay.
Right. He didn't make himself really predominantly present with his person. He didn't really show up to a lot of the protests, and if he did, he didn't make it known that was him.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. So basically, he was essentially, like, you wouldn't characterize him as being like a leader of the Fresno activist movement in any sense. You would call him just a vocal citizen, perhaps somebody who
he was just very vocal online all the time.
Yeah, a vocal citizen is exactly how you would describe John.
Okay.
And I don't even know if you could, like, only maybe just recently, as far as I could tell, like maybe he had just gotten more brave, more vocal again. But I think for me, I used to believe the police killed John wholeheartedly, and I've recently become much more skeptical to the case of John Lang, and I'm currently not willing to go on the record about any of what I believe to be the truth of John Lang because I'm still investigating it for myself. And a lot of the ideas aren't my own, and I would like to give the original person the opportunity to take the credit of breaking the story of what they believe to happen is true.
Sure. Okay.
So let's fast forward to today, where it got sparked back up the other day, and it's spreading around again like wildfire because the local ABC outlet posted
that's
really
ABC
short,
News 30 in Fresno.
Yeah, ABC 30 posted this guy Corin, who's been following the story like crazy because people are in the area are very vocal against him and very vocal with him. He's actually gained quite a bit of notoriety, and people know who he is now based off of this whole story, and he keeps brushing it off, and then finally the coroner's released a report, and it's been months later here now, and John, they didn't post the coroner report or any kind of links or anything. You know how the mainstream media is. So he posted a screenshot that he got from the coroner report and onto his Twitter page, and then made a post about it on ABC 30 with a few paragraphs about how John was he was basically paranoid and just probably mentally disabled. And you know what? That is very well could be true. That's actually something that I figured into it before. Whenever I was talking with the guy, that's why I never really pursued any of his leads any further.
Okay.
So what wound up happening now is this guy's using this guy Corin. His name is Corin Huggard. He's from ABC 30. He's using what he can to try and stomp the story dead and pull the naysay on the activism that's coming about on this, because there's a lot of people that are they're trying to call the bluff. And really, I'm kind of with them on that, because there's a really, really, really horrible amount of no information to just push and brush this under the rug. I personally don't believe that some police officers staged his death and he was murdered by the police department, but he might not have killed himself either, and there's probably justice that needs to be had. We just don't know. And so what we're figuring right now is that this is just a coalesce. The media and the police department and anybody that can be is working together on this to try and push it and brush it under the rug and stop dissidents, which is coming and rising up at like exponential rate. So I'm of the mind that that's what we have here is a lot of media manipulation, a lot of coalescing behind the scenes and speaking how it's supposed to be for the people to make this think that it's just a nothing situation. But I that's my personal belief on it, and that's where I want to keep pursuing it further and actually find out something further and get justice.
It's interesting that James brings up like backdoor collusion and media manipulation. I was contacted on Facebook by a lady named Janet Felben, I believe. And she was from Russia, and she said she had fled the United States. But she was interested in covering the John Lang story because it was an international thing. And she said that when she talked with the public information officer here, that he told her that people were just making it a black helicopter story, and that the conspiracy theorists were digging too deep. And I thought that was curious that he would say that. Not so much that it is damning evidence that the Fresno police did kill John Lang, but just the simple fact that even he was willing to try to allude to the fact that it's a conspiracy theory and that there's just people out there trying to push an agenda concerns me, that maybe the law enforcement and the establishment might be trying to push an agenda of their own when it comes to what actually happened.
Trying to control the story in some way.
Exactly. Because if it is a big conspiracy theory, then you just ignore it. But if it's not a big conspiracy theory, well, then I think you'd want to deflect from it.
That's what I'm worried about. I'm worried that they put this four paragraph article out that just basically bashes John Lang, and even if what they're saying is true, just to write him off as a suicidal person and kind of like he's just a non-necessary, non-essential. He's an exponential. He kind of is an outcast in our society. Whatever. We don't really need to. It's just the attitude behind it that you can tell. You can see it in Corin's writing and in the editing of the article. And it's just proof that all media is independent. It just takes whatever assets and interests you have to get yourself out there and get yourself known. And
yeah,
And it very highly stinks. The story very highly stinks of media manipulation and false information.
Was there any other evidence that he was mentally unstable from his history?
Well, I don't have his medical records, but John was able to draw very large conclusions from minimal evidence, and you can see that by his YouTube videos. And unfortunately, I believe his YouTube channel is taken down. But if you look at the dates on the videos, they're very spread apart. And so he's drawing a lot of these points that, like, law enforcement is harassing him, or that the police are watching him and after him, from evidence that it's not like they're there every Monday and then on Wednesday the car, like, that's a different car, and then on Friday it's a different car. He's drawing these mass conclusions by the fact that, like, the cops were hanging out there on Wednesday in January, but then on this Friday in March, some other cops were there. And now all of a sudden the cops were there 2 times in 3 months. They have to be there for him. And so maybe, like, John had issues. Maybe John had problems. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a professional. But I do know that John was able to draw, like, very large conclusions with very minimal evidence.
So is a guy like Alex Jones.
No.
You know what I mean?
No. Let me stop you there. Compared to Alex Jones, John was a genius.
Okay. Yeah. I just wanted to put that out there. I mean, like,
because John was also very rational.
Okay.
Extremely rational at times.
But so basically, in your personal interactions, and obviously you don't have to answer this. I mean, this goes into personal issues. But in your personal interactions with John, did either of you ever suspect further than that there was some sort of I hate to use the term mental illness because I don't like the term, but I suppose that's the one we'll have to go with.
What's the term?
Mental illness.
I'll just straight say it. I've been very public about it. I wrote John off as crazy the first time I talked to him.
Okay.
Like, after talking with him and meeting with him, and eventually, like, his messages would just sit in my inbox. I didn't want anything to do with it. And when he died, there were many sleepless nights involved with that, because I felt like I failed, not only as, like, a journalist, as, like, a police state activist, as a person, as a friend. And then through my own investigation and through, like, talking with other people, I was able to draw other conclusions that went away from immediately believing that the police were involved in his death. But for a while there, I definitely believed that the police had killed him, and I spent many sleepless nights thinking about the death of John Lang.
Well, for the audience, I would like to go back and go through, like, the immediate events of his death, pretty, like, just go through some of the nuts and bolts, some of the stuff that you guys, because you're on the ground, have talked about.
Okay.
But one question before we do that: did anything ever come of his allegations about the license plate scanning issue? I mean, were there any indictments? Have there been any reforms?
There's never been anything like that, and they still probably practice it to this day. I know they sit outside of bars and watch and wait and hype and hawk people for DUIs the same as they do almost all over the place.
Yeah, exactly.
That just that practice is probably nationwide, and here's why
it certainly is. Yeah.
Here's why I believe that. I believe that police are naturally and inherently lazy as an institution. Mm-hmm. And I base this on the fact that they will drive through private property scanning for easy tickets to generate revenue. Yeah. But when you back into somebody on private property with your car, like I did when I was 17 years old and high on cocaine, they'll show up and then they'll tell you that it's private property and then they'll leave. So I hit a golf cart high on cocaine.
Yeah.
And then they showed up to the private property and told the golf cart that they couldn't do anything about it because it was private property. But they'll drive through Home Depot parking lots on private property, scanning license plates, looking for people to write $120 tickets for, an opportunity to generate revenue.
Yeah.
So they're not interested in keeping you safe. They're interested in generating revenue for the state, in protecting their racket. It's an inherently self-serving institution that it's a parasite on society.
Well, we could do a whole show on police corruption, and honestly, we will. Brian, I'd like to have you on to talk about that at some point too.
You guys let me know.
Yeah, absolutely. But all right, yeah, let's go back into John Lang. Let's talk about, first of all, let's talk about the Facebook post, January 14th. And this is probably when I first became aware of it. I know, James, I believe you shared it. You know, we're mutual friends on Facebook. For the listeners, we both write for the Fifth Column News. We know each other a little bit. So that's when I first became aware of the case. Tell me about the contents of that first Facebook post, because that seemed to be like it was just directly before his death. It seemed like the crux of the lead up to this whole thing.
That's wherein lies the issues that everybody has, is because these posts were made right beforehand. And now I want to backtrack and back up what Brian has said, because there's numerous of us that feel this way, because a lot of us seen those posts.
Sure.
And a lot of us felt initially like we failed on John. You know what I mean? We failed on him as activists. And there's numerous of us that lost sleep over it. So once this happened, that's one of the reasons why it took off the way it did. And so now once he posted that, and he had this aura of posting this, like actually quite frequently, he would post in Facebook groups that are for county islands here in the city that are, specific to the area that he was in. This wasn't an odd post. It wasn't an off the wall post for him.
Okay.
But that's where people can draw the conclusion that he was just putting out a conspiracy to kill himself and set his house on fire and then watch everybody go frantic or not and be dead. I don't really think that he did that. It's very possible, and we haven't seen a coroner's report. But we haven't seen the full coroner's report. All we have is that it says he committed suicide. We don't know what it says about any of the stab wounds on him, what they placed the time of death to be, whether or not he died from smoke inhalation, whether or not he died from actual stab wounds, whether or not he died on the transit to the hospital, or whether he's dead on the scene. There are a bunch of these types of evidential situations that are typically covered in your homicide cases, or at least cases that are specific to homicide related investigations.
Now, ABC News 30 down there, over there, they initially said that the police said that it was a suspicious case, but it was never reported if he was dead on the scene or if he was dead on arrival. They never actually.
They also reported that John was stabbed in the back, and then I called to follow up.
I want to edit that. That's not the ABC 30 that reported that. That is the Fresno B. So we had two different places posting on this story. And one of them sourced it saying that, a person got stabbed and was found in a burning home and was taken to the hospital, but he was alive on his way there and pronounced dead either there or on the way in transit. So
dead on arrival, then DOA.
And then the Fresno B source posted stating that he had sustained stab wounds from from multiple spots. So in his chest and his back, they reported that he sustained stab wounds all over his body, conducive of non-suicidal behavior. And so then later recanted. So now, keep fast forwarding again here to another month or two. And then later the Fresno Bee recanted their story, stating, and basically pointing the finger at the officer that they drew that conclusion from, based off of his testimonial a month or two ago.
Yeah, Joe Gomez, the public information officer for Fresno PD. But basically, what I was trying to get at, though, by saying that FP, that they reported this, is they report incorrectly constantly, and then they just pick it up later. Oh, that was a mistake. Oh, this was wrong. Oh, that was wrong.
They frequently edit themselves.
And it feeds into the misinformation, and it feeds into confusion. And then nobody knows what's going on. And then if John was murdered, they can say it's a suicide. If it was a suicide, they can say he was murdered. And then nobody really knows the difference, because the misinformation has just been like a trail of, well, it was this. Well, no, it was this. Well, we apologize. This information was wrong. It's actually this.
It sounds like they have a history of either disinformation, incompetence, or both.
Right. It's like that's exactly what it is.
Oh.
And that's where a lot of the distrust comes from, is the information is so inconsistent, and the actions are so inconsistent that it's hard to believe that it was a suicide, or that it's hard to believe that it was a murder, or that it's hard to believe that he set his own house on fire, or that it's hard to believe that it was, whatever.
So, essentially then, essentially then it comes down to the story people want to believe in a certain way.
Right.
Exactly. And that's what we have to do.
Well, I think whether you believe it does come down to like a personal thing of whether you believe it or not. But I think what it really comes down to is just how mental health in America is just so disregarded.
Sure.
Because you can make these claims on Facebook and they can be entirely disregarded, and then you show up dead. But nobody ever took the time to go and ask you if you were okay, to substantiate the claims, to debunk the claims. They just let you continue. And if you are seriously mentally ill, if you are suffering from a condition, and eventually you kill yourself or hurt somebody else or hurt a cop, do something crazy, believe whatever you believe, because you've been progressed so far down this path of mental illness that you've kind of forgotten what's real or what isn't real. And it really has, and then you see people like John Lang show up in the news, suspicious death. Maybe the cops killed him. Maybe they did it. The house was burned down. Maybe he was stabbed in the back. Maybe he wasn't. And it's like a perfect storm of disinformation. And it really, for people like myself, it's really disheveling to see like how one person's life can hit the limelight, like somebody who's so like unimportant, I guess you could say, to just like the general way of life in Fresno. And then all of a sudden they hit the limelight after they're dead. But if John was legitimately mentally ill, could it have been something that could have been easily cured with a few sessions with a therapist who used some sort of logic to walk him back through his delusions? Or is it really that the police broke into his house, stabbed him a bunch of times, and set the house on fire because he was able to expose their misconduct and their corruption?
He also alleged a little bit that they were going to frame him.
Of course, yeah, he did allege that they were going to frame him for child pornography or something like that.
I believe that's what it was.
And here's what's quite this probably entirely unrelated, and maybe I'm just like putting my stoned mind far too out into there, but Ian Freeman from Free Talk Live had hit the Free Talk Live studios raided for child pornography, and then shortly after, a Copblock Network contributor, Adam Rupeka, was arrested for sexual assault of a minor, all within 2 months of John Lang being found dead and saying that the police were going to frame him for child pornography.
It's a tactic I've heard before.
Maybe I'm just paranoid, man.
I'd like to throw another piece into this too, because there's all of this that coalesced on the internet, in months and even a couple, like probably a year in advance of all of this actually happening. He just kept saying this. He kept stating that it was probably going to happen, and then posting all these things, fearing for his life. And that's not consistent of a person going through this manic depressive disorder where they're ready to kill themselves. Usually those people don't. Again, I'd like to iterate here too. I'm not a psychologist in any way. I have no credentials to go about here, but based off of my time of people watching, I've noticed that people that do these types of behaviors, like suicide, is they show those really depressive moments where they try and reach out too, but they do so in sometimes in specific ways, which he could have just been doing. But they usually showed this really depressive sign in these moments of reaching out to people for complete and utter help on a disparaging moment, which he was just more actually trying to just reach like minds. From my experiences with John, he didn't have these moments of, oh, woe is me. He was really, really really just passionate about what he was saying and spoke really actually quite articulately. And I just don't know. I don't really get that all of a sudden, he decides to throw himself in this woe is me moment and go all in on a, basically a suicide mission.
Well,
I don't see it happening.
What about this? What if you are mentally ill and you have targeted the police, and I'm not saying like targeted them as the enemy, but like you've identified them as the exacerbator of your mental illness, and so now you've spent 2009 to 2016, almost 7 years, dealing with what you perceive to be police harassment. And you're like, fuck the police. I'm going to post a bunch of stuff on social media. And then I'm going to kill myself and burn my house down.
Like I said, it's very, very well could be that.
Because in your mindset, you only have an extreme solution. And you've been dealing with this for almost a decade. And the only way that you feel that you can get back at them. I mean, I don't know. I just
go ahead, Pat.
Did John have any? Did he have many enemies like outside of the police?
John didn't. Not that he mentioned to me, but John had weird interactions that he all blamed on the police. He was a mechanic he was a boat mechanic, and he said like sometimes people would just call him like strangely and be like, hey, I have fake emissions stickers to sell. Or, can you work on my motor? It's not carb legal, but I have a fake emission sticker for it. And if you work on it, I'll give you some so you can work on other people's too. And John would always say like, no, I'm not comfortable working on your bike or working on your motorcycle, because he believed it was law enforcement trying to set him up.
Plus, John also had all kinds of surveillance all over his home. So, and we have not seen any much of that except for what he's posted previous to his death.
And I think that's telling as well. Like, if the police were constantly harassing John, wouldn't there have been a constant stream of videos from his surveillance system proving this harassment? Right. Instead, there's only a video every few months.
And a van.
Harassment.
a weird, suspicious van, but a weird van. So there's a lot of backdrop that we don't really understand, and he would speak in circles about to us and to a lot of different other people. You know, I had people come out of the woodwork that I never suspected of ever speaking with that guy, sending me screenshots of their messages with him, and it was always the same weird story that he has, but spoken in these weird circles where nobody could actually get him to just say what he knew, or say what he had this problem with, or say if he just was kooky, or nobody really understood exactly what the issue was, and that's why most of the people wrote him off, and when he was trying to reach out, didn't pull and follow through with stories regarding John Lang, regarding himself.
It really sucks because a lot of these, conspiratorial type personalities, their personality is in some ways what allows them to come up with a lot of these conclusions and sort of read between the lines, so to speak. But then it's the very thing that sort of gets people to write them off in the end too, when something tragic like this happens. So it doesn't seem like it's ever really easy with these sorts of situations.
And that's like I said earlier, it's only exacerbated by the misinformation and the disinformation provided by the media and the police. And that's why somebody like John Lang, who may or may not have suffered from severe mental illness, is always going to be forever just one of these. It'll be like the Kennedy assassination, There'd be some of us who believe that it was just one thing, and others who believe another, and others who believe it was another. And it's
and therein lies the sensational problem.
And that's why I believe that when John Lang died, it was so like James said, sensational for the internet. People were very quick to sink their teeth into the conspiracy because, like, man says the police are going to kill him, and then 7 days later he's dead.
Yeah.
That's just like, to say that's not a story is to negate like any journalistic like credibility that you have.
It undermines every one of us as his friend and as a populace for them to just keep brushing this away right now.
Sure.
And so either it's like it's almost like a coin toss, in my opinion. You flip a coin, and depending on the way that you bet is the way that you believe. Either it was the police killed him, because that's just too strange, in my opinion, to be coincidental. The cops are going to kill me. 7 days later, I'm dead. Either the cops killed you or you killed yourself. And
you don't think it was a third party outside of that, perhaps?
That's what I think.
Well, but that third party was hired by the police.
Yeah.
So it's the police killed you either way.
Either that, or there's something that John wasn't saying to everybody, and he did have an enemy that we don't know about. At this point, what we don't know is all of the information.
But where's the logic in that? Because why would you have this arbitrary, it's like, not arbitrary, but this ambiguous enemy that you are trying to shine a light at the police with? Like, if I'm trying to kill James is going to point the gun at somebody else.
Right.
Well, he may not have expected another person to do so. The way I'm thinking here is if there was a third party who was unrelated to the police who did have it out for this fellow, what better time to go do it and try to burn the house down to hide the evidence than when he's being maybe quote unquote paranoid, saying the police are going to kill him. And let me ask you this. Do you believe, even separate from that last statement, that the Fresno Police Department has done their due diligence in investigating this matter?
The Fresno Police have never done their due diligence investigating any matter ever in the history of the Fresno Police Department. And I say the same thing for any law enforcement agency in America.
So first of all, will say that right there is pretty telling.
The word.
And secondly, if you did want to kill this person, and you knew that he was going to blame the police for his death and had in the last several days, well, what better time? The police are going to make it an open and shut case. They're going to rule it a suicide. They're not going to do anything about it because of the political and public exposure that it gives them. So I'd say, you know, if there was somebody, you know.
Isn't that almost a greater incentive for the police to do the best investigation that they can? They're the number one suspect in the investigation that they have to conduct. I mean, not only is it a conflict of interest, but it should also be like a large incentive. So
within a department that consistently finds itself not guilty in complete and utter policy overreach problems.
Right. So we're talking about a corrupt department, and then you were talking about if I kill James, I don't get to investigate the murder of James.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so the police, if they did kill John, are now tasked with investigating his murder. It's a conflict of interest. There's no actual way that we could ever expect to get justice, let alone a transparent investigation.
Which is another thing. John Lang apparently wrote an open letter. He wrote this open letter. I read it. I couldn't find it here in the last 20 minutes, but
I can send you a link.
Yeah, he wrote this open letter though to the Department of Justice and the FBI. Now, if a police department is accused of collusion to murder a private citizen, that triggers a federal investigation. The agencies involved would be the Department of Justice and the FBI. Oh, right. So it's kind of like odd that maybe he was even that further goes into the narrative that perhaps he was anticipating being murdered by a local police department, and so it should trigger a federal investigation.
I'd like to go on the record and let you know that I contacted a local FBI agency to get them involved and acquiesce them with this case, and the lady over the phone basically told me that there was little to no way that there would ever be a follow-up call.
Oh, certainly not. Yeah.
Of course there will, because you need evidence.
Mm-hmm.
You if you think about you can accuse the police all you want. The police get accused every day. I mean, they kill 3 people every day. Yeah. How many people do they hurt? How many people do they cage? So the police are accused every day, and probably less than 1% of that is substantiated. So you can't, you're expecting Big Brother to substantiate the claims against Little Brother.
Right.
Now, every now and then, Big Brother likes to beat up on Little Brother, and that happens. But if I called the police every day for 10 years and said, the Fresno police are going to kill me, the Fresno police are going to kill me, and then I kill myself, or I pay James to kill me. I'm like, hey, bro, here's all the money I've made for the past 10 years. Here's my big TV. Here's my video games. Here's all the food in my fridge. Here's my poker table. Here's everything I have. Just kill me and blame the cops when I'm dead. I've been telling the FBI for 10 years they're going to kill me. You know, if every person that called and said something crazy to the government was substantiated, there would be no time to actually take care of the reality, things that the government claims to take care of. So that's why I don't believe we'll get a federal investigation, and that's why it doesn't matter if you accuse a police department of actually going to kill a private citizen, because they kill 3 private citizens every day, whether they collude to or not. And so you can accuse them every day from here till the end of time, and the federal government is never going to take you seriously without hard evidence.
Well, and to help myself with that, trust this, I knew calling them that I wasn't going to get anywhere, and
sure, yeah, yeah, of course.
But to put it on record and at least try, and that's where it went. That's how it's going to continually go down. So, there's multiple people that have made that comment, and many of them are friends of mine too that have been making those comments all over my page, all over the pages that we utilize, and they want to see a federal investigation rolled out, but it will never happen until there's reasonable evidence that there's foul play. And with the coroner just ruling it a suicide, we literally had the ball thrown away from us all the way across the entire court.
That closes the case. Yeah. Is there any way? I don't know about California state law, right? As far as I know, in most states, in the case of suicide, I think those coroner's reports are closed. You would think they'd be a matter of public record in investigation.
Well, as far as we know, it costs $64 to buy a coroner's report here. Now, I'm not sure if they'll let me pick up a coroner's report, but I've just been waiting to get $64 to go pick up a coroner's report.
You can do it online. That's what Corin did. He utilized the ABC 30 card that he has and purchased the coroner's report, which they probably get for $30 because they're the local news.
You can't access a coroner's report?
You have to pay for it.
No, it'd be, but nobody has yet. Nobody has gotten a copy of the coroner's report.
I have not been able to pay for it. I think I'm going to go do it real soon, though.
Well, honestly, I'll just say this. This is just personal advice. Considering the fact that this is national news, and I'll say this right now, and we'll share it. If you put a Kickstarter page up tomorrow, well, share it far and wide. $64 is not going to be hard to come up with.
I know. I actually I tried to. So the editor-in-chief at Fresno People's Media, who helped break the story open with us, he was the first one to blog about it and put as much information as possible on it, which is one of the reasons I didn't, is I didn't want to eat shares on his. I literally we just talked about it 2 days ago again, and I told him we need to crowdsource this. And
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And it would be a matter of maybe 4 hours before it's done.
Yeah, if you put it up on Reddit or something, you're gonna get it in an hour. You're gonna get
even if I just shared it on my own page. So that's what I was thinking, is trying to do that, but I also have so much going on. It's one of those. This is one of those we've had months now. We're gonna have another day or two.
Well, I'll say this for you guys. I'll say this for the listeners. Honestly, we're talking about federal investigation. Obviously, I have very little faith in a federal investigation. What there should be is a public investigation, and the public seems interested in this case. Whatever the truth is here, and you'll get $64 in the first hour you put up a Kickstarter to legitimately carry out a public investigation about this matter, and that I have more faith in a public investigation than I do a federal, state, or local investigation.
I would investigate the Fresno Police Department for free.
That we've been trying to.
I would show up at 6 a.m. and I would leave at 11 a.m. and I would do it for free.
Well, by the time this podcast, obviously everybody knows we pre-record our podcasts. I'll talk to you guys. Let's coordinate and do the Kickstarter, at least for the coroner's report, for God's sake, $64. And by the time this podcast hits, we'll have the link on all of our pages and on this podcast, so you can donate if it hasn't been done already. So
besides the coroner report, what else?
You chop up the.
No, go ahead, Pat. What's
I was gonna say, besides the coroner report, where else was there ambiguity as far as the details of his death? I was there an autopsy? Was there not an autopsy?
The autopsy was done by the coroner, and that's what the report is. The coroner's report is the autopsy findings.
Okay, right. But was there anything else besides that?
Well, there was just a lot of ambiguity in general. He was talking about, the police killing him, then he showed up dead, and then.
What about? I'm sorry to break in. What about reports, official reports that must have been documented from the ambulance drivers and from officials at the hospital? What about those documents?
What I'm looking for. That's what I want, and that's where I'm at. Is I'm trying to find next of kin. These people, these reports that had to be filed with medical reasonings, but you cannot access them due to confidentiality rights because you have to be the next of kin in order to receive that stuff. So his next of kin, whomever that was, is where I'm trying to go with this. That person is not public whatsoever, will not be public about this. I cannot find even a name at this point. And he had an ex-wife and a daughter, which is where I think John Lang's next of kin would have wound up.
I'm not sure. How old a man was he when he passed?
Early 40s probably.
So he could have surviving parents as well. That's
he was probably 40s.
Okay.
But I think that the John Lang story is just a powerful testament to the way that mental health is handled in America.
Specifically by the police department.
Well, like even by people such as myself. I just blew him off as crazy, but I didn't really blow him off as like crazy.
He didn't
seem
completely mentally incompetent, but he wouldn't give you answers to specific questions. He would speak in circles and go back to different points.
Okay.
And
it was he made interesting conversation.
Whereas I bet if I had spent the time that I had known John Lang trying to get him help, maybe he would still be alive today if he killed himself. You know, if the police did it, well, then obviously he wasn't crazy at all, and everything he said was rational, and I have no reason to get him help.
Well, but I suppose though that's a good that's a good I mean that's a good statement for all of us and everyone listening that regardless of what happened in the case of John Lang, if you know somebody who's suffering some kind of trouble, you know, do your best. Don't dismiss it, and step in and try to help. Just
ask them if they need help. You don't have to be. It's not rude. It's not. You're not being an asshole.
It's the human thing to do.
Yeah. But you might want to ask your friend, because my friend was suffering from a lot of mental illness, and he ended up killing himself. This was in 2010, and I was in Iraq at the time, and I was trying to help him over Facebook just through conversations. But this was a much different situation where I just thought like John had an idea, and he was just like a normal guy.
Yeah.
Because when I met him in person, he seemed like a normal guy. His house was average. He was an average guy. He, didn't seem.
That was my idea of John too. When I specifically talked to him, it was, all right, this guy has some far-fetched ideas. I was looking into it as a story, and it went somewhere where I couldn't get any specifics out of him. And then once I kind of exited out of the story and I wasn't being an asshole or trying to talk down to him or anything, but once I got out of the story, I thought this isn't something that I want to go and pursue unless I have all the information that I need, and he's not giving it, or he's not competent enough to be able to give it to me. And that's where I kind of was like, okay, think about it this way. Some people actually believe that the earth is flat. So, this guy's probably just not, he's not right with it. He doesn't have all his facts straight. Something's going on here. He might be mentally ill somewhere in that realm where I don't know this is all fact, but I don't know that it's not either. I'm just going to leave it until he gives us something competent, something concrete. And once it was like 2 days later, like Brian was saying, he's dead. It was bam. It was everything. Everybody got hit with a ton of bricks because we all watched but then we just had no idea that it was going to just be this suspicious death in a burnt home.
I mean, I feel as if the way he died, it just leaves so much room for error. I mean,
well, here's what's even crazier about the way he died. Like I said, it was like maybe a day or two that James and I showed up at his house, and like we kind of got sidetracked like an hour ago when we were talking about this. But right after I showed up with James showed up, and then this golden Toyota Camry showed up, and there were just like these two cop-looking dudes in it. And James and I confronted them. We're like, "Are you guys cops? You know, do you guys work for the police department? Or are you guys cops?" And they're like, "Yeah, we work with the police department, you know." And it was just very strange that just minutes after we showed up to check out John's house and see if it actually was John that was dead, the cops showed up.
These people said they were police officers?
Yeah, they admitted to being cops.
But
they were plainclothes?
They were in a civilian vehicle, of which I have the license plate number and I can show.
In civilian clothing?
And they were wearing plain clothes.
Why would they be driving by the house?
I don't know. They weren't driving by the house. They stopped and parked behind the car I was in.
They were there pacing the place, watching it.
And then at the end of the conversation, they tell us to be careful. It's like I've never told my friends to be careful when I ended a conversation.
Be careful, they said?
Yeah, they said it twice, be careful.
By the way, all this information is on YouTube as well, so you'll be able to see it and find it as well if you want to insert that in any kind of...
Did you get video of this encounter? Or...
I have a video of this, yes.
Of this particular encounter?
Yes.
Okay, we're gonna link that. We're gonna go ahead and link that to this podcast. Wherever you're watching it, you'll find that link in the description. That's very strange. I mean, why would that interaction occur?
Right.
Yes.
Well, dude, the cop showing up in plain clothes and being weird. All right, cool. But have a nice day. See you guys later. You know?
Be careful.
But be careful.
Yeah. So all right. So I'm gonna float this out there. Okay.
Okay.
It seems to me that. Well, let's say the Fresno Police Department had no involvement whatsoever in the death of John Lang.
Okay.
All right. That, from what you've told me about the subsequent interactions with the public among the media and the police department, and that particular interaction there, it feels like they have at least capitalized it to try to spread fear among the Fresno activist community. Would you say that's a good characterization? That they have at least capitalized on this man.
Some sort of intimidation's going on, you know.
Yeah.
I don't think that they were trying to help spread any fear. I think that it went on its own based off of the ideology that John had and his posts and the numerous people that seen his posts, because he was kind of Facebook famous. Not really because he had a bunch of people always commenting and talking to him and speaking with him, but because he always was posting in places. He would continuously post stuff. Anyway, I wouldn't say that it boils down to the issue of complete indetermination. It was the fact that he reached out to so many people, and then that once that happened, the police department wasn't trying to play on these fears. They're trying to brush us under a rug. The fact that his home was boarded up literally hours after, because it had to be within 24 to 36 hours that his house was boarded up. We showed up and it was already locked, boarded, and City of Fresno had control of it. And when you think about cases like this, I mean, yeah, it happens that way, but sometimes the investigation drags out long periods of time and people need to get in and out and continually collect things and continue to access the place. everything about it seems ominous, with us showing up, then these two plainclothes officers show up, obviously monitoring the situation, and tell us to be careful. And then we're online doing all this, and they're not talking to us. I mean, I've called the police department. I've asked to speak with their sergeant at the homicide department. I've asked to speak with multiple different people, and they're just not willing to speak with anybody outside of the avenues that they have set up for themselves.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, they're basically trying to minimize the entire thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which reeks of media manipulation at the very, very least. Even if they don't have any hand in this whatsoever, he was killed by somebody else, or even stabbed himself. Even if that happened, even if he killed himself to try and gain some sort of, blockade, they're not saying that. They're saying that, but they're saying it in a roundabout way, and they're brushing it under the rug so that they can't get held accountable if anything comes out later on in life, later on down the line, which is what I truly believe is happening right now. I believe that it's just this is the epitome of a case that is media in bed with the police and rolling them through the motion.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say it seems like it's pretty clear that if this case says anything, it does say something about the incestuous relationship between those in power and the media. It definitely says something about that, and obviously it goes to a culture of suspicion that we have, regardless, based on so often being lied to by people in power that we can't even even if it's as clear cut as this guy was a troubled guy and he killed himself, right? We don't want to believe that. A lot of people don't want to believe that.
Well, even if
goes to that culture of suspicion.
Even if people don't want to believe it, like, doesn't the culture of suspicion, isn't it telling about just the actions of the establishment?
Exactly.
People aren't suspicious of bad ideas.
Not just that, but it shows the dissent among the populace itself.
That's where I believe, like, it's a bad idea. We don't, like, police officers, we have a monopoly on the protection racket, or on, protection services, turning it into a racket, because the way that they enforce it is a bad idea. The way that we handle a lot of our mental health right now is a bad idea. And that's why so much of it is done through the force of government, and through pointing guns at each other, and through taxation, and through almost like a socialist method of healthcare, than through any type of free market where people can pay for the services that they want. And that's just kind of what you get when you have an establishment that operates under these pretenses.
Well, it's certainly what you get when you have an establishment that is clearly class stratified and not operating in the best interests of its citizenry. Right?
You just mentioned it right there.
Yeah.
Most definitely when you have a...
You just mentioned it right there. This is the epitome of something. Another way to put it is of white privilege. This guy didn't live in the best portion of the neighborhoods. He didn't have the best job or make the best amount of money. He was in the impoverished neighborhood, being brushed aside and critical of the police. So constantly probably getting completely even real irrational behavior sometimes. I'm almost positive of it. And
this, I would almost adamantly oppose that entire statement.
But what it is it's like if somebody in this town north of Herndon with valedictorian to a local college or a scholarship program or something like that, if it was them being investigated under a murder suspicious case, it would be a completely different scenario.
No. James, you literally can't say that, because you said it was white privilege, but then you said he lived in a poor neighborhood.
But that's the problem.
So then we have definitely got some sort of disconnect here, because that wouldn't make it racism, that would make it classism. And so it's not about being white, it's about being poor.
But that's the thing,
is that would make it classism, not white privilege. Because even white people can be poor.
Anyway, so
I don't know that we need to get into the distinctions quite at the moment between white privilege and class privilege. I'm an intersectionalist. I believe those things are deeply tied together and tend to reinforce and disenforce each other in various very complex ways. I think that's a subject for another conversation.
It's definitely a different podcast.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
I just wanted to point to James for his thinking. It wasn't like an attack on or anything. It wasn't like it was just for James's thinking. Like, you can't put white privilege and classism in the same type of
I think category. You can. Anyway, so that's where I was going with the comments, is that if this was a high school cheerleader girl that was outspoken against the police, as opposed to John Lang, who's outspoken against the police and very outspoken, and had all kinds of different documentation of his his person, his home, this place. So it was just it's a very obvious differential of thought towards this guy than other people would receive, and that's where I believe it's going.
Yeah. Well, gentlemen, we're right there about at our time. I don't know. Well, first of all, what I want to say is that this entire hour we've been talking about a human being who lived and breathed on this earth, and now he has passed. So I would like all of us just to remember the fact that this is a person who's gone from us now, and to remember the gravity of the value of a human life, just briefly.
I would just like to say that I think John Lang provided a lot of value to not only just like myself individually, but to anybody else that he was involved with. Even with the speculation around his death and his life and our interactions together definitely motivated me to want to take much more initiative the next time that I am in contact with somebody who may or may not suffer from some type of mental disorder, but has a story or has an idea that really isn't substantiated by much other than the person's own experiences, and to try to be just a better friend and a better aid to them.
Yeah, absolutely.
I agree.
All right. Well, first James and then Brian, if both of you would like to tell the audience where they can find some of your work or any pertinent details about this particular case, go ahead and do that now. James, share your social media stuff. Brian, share your social media stuff. Where you can find more from these guys.
All right. So this is James. My last name is Job, spelled J-O-B. I can be found a lot on Facebook. I'm also on Twitter at JobJames85, and then I'm a journalist, freelance with the Fifth Column News, as well as Fresno People's Media and the internal communications right now with Solutions Institute on their national leadership organization. That's a activist consultant network, basically, where as an activist, if you need to find help with anything regarding casting legislature or organizing events, you can find help there. So that's where I kind of dwell as amongst many other things. And I'm gonna stop myself right there.
And I'm Brian. You can just find most of my stuff at briandavidsumner.com or copblock.org and the Fresno People's Media.
I don't know. I'm very curious about this case. I have been for the last couple of months. I don't know that my mind has been changed one way or another after tonight. I suppose our listeners will have to decide for themselves and let us know. But definitely all of those links will be available in the description. Everything that we talked about will be available in the description. And I want to thank James and Brian quite a bit for being with us tonight.
Definitely. Thanks
Thank
for having
you
us.
for having us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, that has been another episode of the Free Radical Media Podcast. I am, as ever, Eric Scott Picard, one of your co-hosts, the other being Patrick Ryan. And you can find us at our webpage at freeradicalmedia.net, as well as on Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, and pretty much all of your other major social media outlets. We look forward to hearing from you in the future. Thanks a lot for listening. Okay, Pat. All right, cool.
You want me to do it now?